Okay, so if you notice since like the beginning of the prophecies in Daniel, um, it's basically this repetition, right? So we started off with the statue prophecy, and then the four beasts one, and then the ones with the ram and the goat. But pretty much it's the same prophecy, right? It just kind of repeats over and over again. But every time he does, every time the angel kind of tells him that story, um, he gives more detail, right? In the last one that we read, so chapters 8 and 9, that's where we get that really good information on Jesus, right? So the building of the temple, and then the baptism of Jesus, death of Jesus, and then the stoning of Stephen, and the way that Christianity kind of spreads out from there. Um, the last three chapters, so chapters 10, 9, or 10, 11, and 12, if you remember the end of chapter 9, Daniel's even more confused than ever, right? Because he's like, hey, you're giving me this 2,300 year prophecy, you're giving me all this stuff. Um, and he's, yeah, he's not, I don't know if he's only, I don't even know if he's confused anymore. He just doesn't want to accept what the angel's telling him, kind of a thing, right? He was hoping Israel would simply come back and life would go on. What the angel's going to do now, and it's the same angel, Saint Gabriel, he's going to show up in chapter 10 and retell the prophecy again for the like fourth or fifth time. Except this time he's going to get into like intricate detail of the kings. So like these many kings of Greece and then Persia and then da, 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 da. It's so detailed that I never actually do it with people. If you really really like history, there's books you can find that will actually explain every single thing. It's amazing how accurate it is. Like it's ridiculous, to the point that it's so detailed that there's a lot of scholars that are like, okay, we know Daniel's an old book, right? We know that it was part of the ancient Hebrew scriptures, but chapters 10 and 11 must have been added in. Like, it's way too, like this stuff must have happened and they just wrote it in and threw it in. But as far as we know, it is one book written back then. Um, and it's kind of funny that they even say that, right? Like, it's too detailed of a prophecy, kind of a thing, right? But I'll give you some just introductions into it. So Daniel chapter 10, so in chapter 10 again he's kind of praying to God and stuff like that. Gabriel shows up again. And in verse 20 he says this. Then he said, "Do you know why I've come to you?" Right? Um he in all the other chapters he's like, "Listen, I've come to explain. I've come to explain." And this time the guy's like, "Listen, you know why I've come to you, right?" Like he's like, "This isn't new. We've done this several times. So do you know why I've come to you? And now I must return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I have gone forth, indeed the prince of Greece will come. But I will tell you what is noted in the scriptures of truth. No one opposes me except these, against these, except Michael, your prince." So he's basically saying we're already getting those same nations, right? So he's currently fighting with the king of Persia, but after the king of Persia is defeated, then the king of Greece is going to come in, and God is kind of going to battle him, right? Until he gets his freedom. So Daniel 10, and it keeps going like that, right? This is what I'm going to show you. In chapter 11, right in the beginning, it's the same conversation. It's not like two different events. It's literally just a continuation. It was, um, I don't know why they put Daniel 10, Daniel 11, but it's probably just because it'd be too long of a chapter otherwise, right? But in chapter 11, the angel is just still talking. Gabriel is still talking. And he says this: "Also in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I, stood up to confirm and strengthen him. And now I'll tell you the truth. Behold, three more kings will arise in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than them all. By his strength through his riches he shall stir up all against the realms of Greece." So if you remember the other ones, it simply says, there's going to be this empire and then the next empire. But here the angel's like, no, So you currently have the Darius the Mede. He's the king of Persia right now, but there's going to be three more, right? And then there's going to be a fourth one, right? Or the last of the third is the fourth because of Darius. And the fourth one's going to be the most powerful out of all of them, so much that he's going to try to conquer Greece. Have you ever seen the movie 300? All right, well, that's exactly what this is. So that king of Persia tries to conquer Greece, and is stopped by the, what are they called? Oh my word, what's their name? Not the Argonauts. It's the, I can't remember what they're called. It's this warrior people of that kind of come from Greece. It's the 300. It's literally that little army that they make, right? And they're able to kind of hold him off. But then the next year, because the king of Persia gets so upset that he wasn't able to do it, he sends his entire army in, right? But when he does that, this time Greece is willing to fight. Because if you watch the movie 300, basically Persia's coming and the Greeks are like, no, 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 we don't want to fight them. We're just gonna, let's give them taxes or let's give them money and they'll leave, right? And it's these 300 that are like, no, we got to defend this land, right? So they go. But a year later, when Persia tries to attack again, Greece is like, no, this time we're going to fight. And they actually conquer Greece. So that this last sentence is literally like the movie, right? So it's kind of like Persia tries to conquer Greece, but in the end, Greece conquers Persia. All right. And then it keeps going on. And in Greece, there's going to be this king who's going to fight that guy, and then that guy's going to go fight back. And it literally just goes back and forth between kings. And unless you're like a history major, it's just way too much information. By the end of chapter 11, we're already talking about that little horn power again, right? The one that takes away the sacrifice and puts himself in the place of God, blah, blah, blah. And that's how chapter 11 ends. Chapter 12, again, isn't a new chapter. It's the angels still talking, right? So it's literally, what happens after this empire. And if you remember all the stories that we've done, once you get to like the toes of the statue or that little horn, it's God's empire, right? God's empire comes in and conquers the world. That's chapter 12. Chapter 12 is actually the second coming, all right? What's amazing about it is the second coming of Jesus, right, of God. That is almost primarily a New Testament um, issue, right? The Old Testament almost doesn't even mention that. In fact, the idea that people go to heaven, you really don't see that in the Old Testament, right? There's some heroes that go there, like Moses and Elijah, Enoch. But in general, if you talk to Jews, like if you talk to an Orthodox Jew today who only uses the Old Testament, and you ask them what eternal life is, and they'll basically say it's your children, right? So the way that I stay alive is by having sons, and they have sons, and they have sons, and that way my name lasts forever, right? I'll have eternal life. An Orthodox Jew won't be like, oh yeah, when you die, God takes you up to heaven, live in heaven, all that. They don't believe in that because it's not really in the Old Testament, except for Daniel. Daniel is very, very clearly going to be talking about that, right? About like a resurrection, people coming back from the dead, and so on. So that's why Daniel is chapter 12 is an amazing chapter because it basically does belong in the New Testament, right? What it talks about is revolutionary in Judaism. All right. Any questions so far? All right, excellent. So I actually put the last verses in there. So this is talking about that horn power, right? And he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him. So this is talking about that the end of the little horn power, right? The one that puts himself in the place of God. And that's where chapter 12 kicks in, which is why it actually begins at that time, right? So it's like a direct continuation. right? So once all the empires of the earth are done, this is the last empire. So, and it says at this time, Michael. Did we do a study on Michael? I can't remember. I think we did, where I explained that Michael is Jesus.
I think you probably did when you did the study on God the Son, but I don't remember specifically.
I think it's when I did it on angels, right? Because the
Oh,
question that always comes up is, Archangel Michael, right?
maybe.
So again, just quickly though, the word Michael appears seven, I believe it's 7 or 8 times in the Bible, at least in reference to like this character. There's, I think, another Michael in the Bible, but he's just a human being. This Michael, this like angelic version of Michael, appears 7 or 8 times. In one of those times, he's called the Archangel, right? Archangel Michael. Because of that, a lot of people assume that Michael is an angel and therefore cannot be Jesus. The problem with that is archangel doesn't mean you're an angel. Archangel means that you're the master of the angels. That's literally like arch is the ruler of the angels. So you don't, for instance, if you're a lion tamer, you don't have to be a lion to be a lion tamer, right? You're a person who tames lions. An archangel is someone that rules over angels. So it could be anyone. Well, it's actually Jesus. But in other places, in fact, if we go back to this one, so Daniel 10, verse 21, it says, no one opposes me against these except Michael, your prince, right? We only have one prince, and that's Jesus. In fact, the prince, it literally is the son of a king, right? Or the son of the king. So that's one of the times that Michael actually shows up. This is another time. And here, again, this is talking about God's empire, right? This is talking about the last godly empire. And it's not God who's standing up, not God the Father. It's Michael, right? This Michael character stands up. And then he's called the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. That's Jesus, right? Jesus is the great prince. He's the one that stands over us, right? So when you actually look through all 7 or 8 verses of Michael, it is very, very clear that it's talking about Jesus. Now, why does it use the name Michael? It's, well, Jesus in the Bible has literally hundreds of names, right? But whenever Jesus is like in fighting mode, whenever he's like a general of his armies, he's called Michael. All right, that's like his military name or his military title, and that's what's happening here. He's standing up and he's going to go to war with the world, right? So the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. All right. So it's basically saying, throughout the world, there's always been wars, right? Nation against nation, blah blah blah. But this is saying, listen, this is the war that ends all wars. This war has never happened in history, kind of a thing. At that time, your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. All right. Um, I think we've mentioned the book before, right? Where the book was opened. Have we mentioned that? I think, or is that just in chapter 12?
I don't think we have.
Okay. Revelation talks about the book a lot, right? It's in Revelation, it's called the book of the Lamb, right? So the book of everyone that's going to be saved by Jesus. Here, it's just called the book. It's opened, right? I think it's actually the next verse. Or next couple of verses. So this is that now talking about the resurrection, all right? So in verse 1, Michael stands up, declares war on the earth, basically, right? I'm going to clean out sin. I'm going to clean out evil and sin and death and all of those things that we kind of read in Revelation, right? Those promises of God. In verse 2 is the actual consequence of that, right? So, and many of those who sleep in the dust, that's a very clear symbolism for death, right? Those that sleep in the dust. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. So not only does it talk about the resurrection, but it actually talks about both resurrections. All right, when we get into Revelation, starting next week, we're going to learn that there isn't just one resurrection. The Revelation is very, very clear that there's two resurrections. The first one is for the just, for those that are with God, and the second one is for those who are condemned. All right? And that's exactly what this is saying. So when Michael stands up, when he comes back to earth, there's going to be two resurrections. The first one are the ones that get everlasting life, and then the second one is for those that receive shame and everlasting contempt. It's their judgment, right? Those who are wise shall shine like the firmament of the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. So this is actually giving us the hint, again, very much out of the New Testament. In the book of Thessalonians, Paul talks, I think it's Thessalonians or Corinthians, I think it's Thessalonians, where it talks about, in the blinking of an eye, we shall all be changed, right? So all these human bodies will become heavenly spiritual bodies, right? Will shine, that kind of an image. Revelation also talks about that. And Daniel talks about that, right? So not only are God's people going to resurrect, but they don't just resurrect as regular human beings again. They resurrect so that those who have chosen God, anyways, will shine, right? They'll become like angelic, they'll become heavenly. Um, they become like the stars, similar to the angels. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal up the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. So this is like the sixth time or something like that, where Gabriel's like, Daniel, this isn't for you, all right? You're not going to see any of this. You're going to die without Israel being rebuilt, right? You're going to be, it's not what you expected, right? I know you had hopes. I know you wished that Israel would become a nation again. But here's the thing: what the angel's really telling Daniel is, you're thinking too small, right? Like you just want your nation back. God is giving the earth back, right? Like he's literally giving the earth back to God's people. This is bigger than Israel. This is bigger than Judaism. This is bigger than the temple. This is about the salvation of the earth, right? The forgiveness of sins, which is why first he mentions Jesus, and now he's talking about the second coming, right? So that's really what he's trying to get that across to Daniel. I don't know if it ever fully works, but that's what the angel's trying to do. So the angel's like, listen, seal up the book. Or in other words, the prophecies are all true, but it's not going to make sense to anybody until the future, right? Until Jesus arrives and people understand what the mission of the Messiah really is. Because to the Jews, and this goes right up until Jesus' day, right? The disciples used to ask Jesus, okay, when are you going to be king? Right? When are you going to fight the Romans? When are you going to topple the government and make Israel great again? They're thinking like Daniel, right? And what the angel's saying is, listen, we got to get past that thinking. Once Jesus comes and actually explains his mission, then Daniel will make sense, right? Then these prophecies will make sense. And that's exactly what happened in history, right? What's interesting is it says, seal up the book until the time of the end, right? Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. There's been various explanations of what that last part means. If you take it from a very literal standpoint, it literally means people will be traveling all over the world, right? So in Daniel's day, most people never even left their city, right? You would work the same land, you'd go to the nearby village, and that's about it. Um, some people, the wealthy, the travelers, they might go to different countries, right? But it was still a very small world. Um, what the angel seems to be saying here is, listen, people will be going all over the world in the end, right? It's not going to be about one single country anymore. This is a worldwide message, right? This is a prophecy for the whole world. So this people are talking about, this is talking about like airplanes and trains and mass, transportation and things like that. And then the other one is knowledge shall increase, which There's no doubt about that, right? I mean, the amount of knowledge is just spiked in this last little time period. Have you ever seen the graph in terms of like human knowledge?
I don't think I've seen the graph on human knowledge, but like the rate of just
Yeah,
improvements or
yeah.
whatever.
So it's amazing. If you go back like, I don't know, like 4,000 years or whatever, the line basically stays steady, right? Like it's slowly increasing, but you can't even notice. Once you get to the Industrial Revolution, it literally just starts curving. And then once you hit like the 19th, 20th century, it's like it's going straight up, right? So the idea that knowledge shall increase, that's definitely happened, right? So it's just these two little tidbits that they like to throw in there. So that's the literal viewpoint. Other people see this more as a spiritual thing. And so basically what it means is people will be not running physically, but kind of reading the Bible like they're running, like going here and going there and studying this and studying that. Like the way we do Bible studies, where you try to get all the different context and stuff. And knowledge shall increase. Again, not physically, but more knowledge in terms of the Bible and the prophecies and so on. So that will increase. I guess it makes sense, but I kind of like the literal version because I think it really does meet with what's happening now. But I've heard just different ideas on this. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because it's basically saying, listen, this is for the end of time, right? So it's like our time. This is when these books are going to really be understood. And in fact, Daniel really, really wasn't completely understood until about the 1840s, right? Which is actually around the end of that 2,300-year prophecy, right? 1843, 1844, around there. That's when in history they call it the Great Enlightenment because it kind of came out of the blue, right? As Adventists, we talk about Miller a lot because that's kind of where we came from. But if you actually study that time period, out of nowhere, people all over the world started studying the Bible and the prophecies. So while Miller was studying it here in America, in the Americas, there's guys in Europe, there's guys in Africa, there's I think even some in Asia, all studying Daniel, like all studying Revelation, Daniel, and the kind of the same things, and basically coming up with the same idea. Um, so yeah, there was this very strong increase of just going back to the Bible, right? Up until that point, you have a lot of churches already, right? So the big ones, the Catholic, the Baptist, the Anglican, Episcopalian, those guys. Um, and up until that point, they're kind of running religion, but most of it's tradition, right? Most of it's, this is what we've always done. And it's in the 1830s, 1840s, where people are like, well, we have Bibles now. So we don't need to follow tradition anymore. We could actually go into the Bible and follow what the Bible says, right? And it's during that kind of increase that you get the Millerites who make this prophecy about the second coming and so on. But it's also the beginning of so quite a few. The the vast majority of evangelical movements, like the spiritualist movements, all come in the 1840s. The Mormon Church, Jehovah Witness, Seventh Day Adventist. There's quite a few that of these new religions that pop up, and all of them are popping up because for the first time they're like, hey, we're not just going to follow tradition anymore. We're going to study the Bible and figure something out, right? And so that's why you get a lot of these movements popping up around this time. Um, and so that's kind of the beginning of the end, right? There's this suddenly this interest, and for the first time, Daniel is being understood, right? Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
So why would like in this period of enlightenment, like why does that correlate with like the Mormons? Because isn't that totally different?
Yeah, well, they see the Mormons is different, right? The other ones are still Bible based, whether you agree with them or not, but they're at least still trying to use the Bible. The Mormons around the same time, I think it's a little bit earlier. You get Joseph Smith, I believe is his name, who has a Christian background, but then has these visions in the desert, and either discovers the Bible or writes their Bible. I can't remember which way it is now. Um, so yeah, that one's kind of different, right? It's not going back into, it's still a rejection of tradition, but
Mhm.
it's not a going into the Bible kind of a thing. It's finding a completely brand new scriptures, right? So that's where the Book of Mormon comes from, yeah, during that time period.
Okay.
Um, it kind of makes sense that it would be around that time because there's this openness to accept new ideas, right? If it had been before that, um, well, let's face it. I mean, there's a reason why the states have like the witch hunts and things like that, right? The Inquisition in Europe and so on. That was a very strong fight to keep tradition, right? This is how we've always done it. Anybody that thinks anything differently, we got to kill them, right? We
Mhm.
got to get rid of them. It's not until the 1840s, and to be honest, probably because America's built on that idea of freedom and openness and being able to do whatever you want. Um, that again, this movement of let's actually try something different, right? Let's either go to the original source or, like in the Mormons' case, where they found, a different scripture to go by. Yeah.
And is it true that that was also the period of the start of Darwinism?
Yes, it's roughly around the exact. It's actually exactly around the same time,
And okay, like
which is
would
probably again
that
it makes sense, right? Because it's going against
yeah,
tradition, right? Darwin would, if you know the history of Darwin, I actually did a project on him. When he went to school, it was to be a priest, right? Like he went to school to become a priest, hated it, like it was never his thing. And then when he got this chance to go on this expedition, he jumped on it, right? Um, and but he was still Christian, right? Like he wasn't against God or anything like that. But then as he started seeing the animals and this idea of, this the progression of life and so on, that's where he starts getting these ideas that would then challenge the idea of God and creation and so on. Though again, I would say that still follows in that same enlightenment period because it's again, I'm not going to just accept tradition. We just accept that God made everything. Okay, I'm not even going to question it. He does. He says, well, what if it wasn't? What if it's something else? Right? And that's where he starts going. From what I studied, by the way, the reason that he died is because everywhere he went on his expeditions, he ate everything, all the local foods. Around the middle of the expedition, in his journals, he starts writing the fact that he's getting these stomach aches and things like that. They believe, some people, anyways, that it was the armadillo. He ate armadillo meat in one of the countries. I don't know where, Peru or something. Who knows?
mm,
And they say armadillo meat is horribly infested. Like it's it's right up there with like eating human meat kind of a thing. Like it just shouldn't be done. Um, and that's when he really got sick. And when he came back, he never recovered. He had stomach problems for the rest until he died, literally. And they thought he actually could have died because of that. Because he dies not very old, right? Like he could have lived a lot longer.
mm,
But I just thought that was interesting.
that
But
is
yeah, so it's all around that same time. So there's this very big rejection of what we've always accepted. Let's look at new ideas, right? Which again, knowledge shall increase, right? There's this exploration of the world, increase of knowledge, and that's when all of Daniel really comes through. Um, then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood two others, one on this river bank and one on the other river bank. So two angels appear. One said to the other man, clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? Then I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, when he had held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swore to him who lives forever that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time. Now we've studied this. Remember when we talked about the horn power? It rules for a time, times, and half a time. 1,690, I think. Let me double check here. I should have had the graph out on this one. All right, so 360 plus 360 plus 360 plus 150. Yeah, 1,260. All right, which is that lifespan of that horn power, right? Of the Dark Ages, Holy Roman Empire. Although I heard, I did not understand. So again, he's still not getting. And then I said, "My Lord, what shall be the end of these things?" Because again, for Daniel, it's just too long, right? Like, whoa, you're talking about thousands here. I wanted 70 years, and that was it. Then he said, "Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed and sealed up until the time of the end." So for again, the angel's telling him, "Listen, it's not for you. Just walk away from this. Many shall be purified, made white and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand." So again, he's talking about that division, right? That at the end, there's the two groups: those who understand, who accept God, and those who don't and just continue on sinning and doing, what they do in life. From the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. All right. So I really should have had the graph here. So the original time times and half a time is 1,260 years, right? But this is 1,290 days or years. And this one actually talks about, this is when the daily is taken away. So it's before he becomes that superpower, but he's already influencing the church. All right. So this isn't when the horn begins and ends. This is slightly before that, right? And that's what these 30 extra years are. So let me see if I can quickly look this up on Wikipedia. It'll give us the answers here. All right, let's see here. Let's see if this gives us dates. It's explaining the days, but it's not giving me actual dates. Let me see here. No. Let's try a different one. Yeah, so we know. So the 1,260 years, right? That original one, time times half a time, that is from 538. That's when the Caesar gave the Pope authority over Rome, right? So it became a nation at that point until 1798, which is when Napoleon dethrones the papacy. And so the Holy Roman Empire comes to an end, right? But the church already existed before that, right? It was already really strong before that. So if you go back 30 years, it takes you to 508. All right. 508 AD is also a really important date in history for the Holy Roman Empire, because this is when King Clovis, he is the king of France, I believe, and he is baptized on that day. And what that is so you had Rome, right, which was still run by the Caesar, but the Pope was there and very influential, and they were trying to convert the rest of Europe. In 508 is the first major king that they're able to do that to. So in 508, when Clovis the First, I believe, is baptized Catholic, he is the first nation to go under the umbrella of the Holy Roman Empire. It's not official yet, but he already has that influence, right? He's already kind of stretching out his power and so on. And so that's why instead of the 1,260, it's giving us the 1,290, right? So these extra 30 years going backwards. But then it gives us a third date, all right? In verse 12, blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days, all right? So we have the 1,260, and then you go backwards and you get the 1,290, and now we're getting a longer prophecy, which we're gonna do this because of, I'll show you the dates. We're gonna go forward now, right? So we've gone backwards for the first one. Now we're gonna be going forward for the second one, for the 1,335 days. So using the first one, right, the 508, when Clovis is crowned or baptized under the Holy Roman Empire, so it's the beginning of the Holy Roman Empire. If you go 1,335 years into the future, it takes you to 1843, which is that Age of Enlightenment period. And it's actually the date where they thought the world was going to end, right? 1843 is also known as the Great Disappointment, because there was this very strong movement that this is when the temple is going to be cleansed, right? Remember that prophecy? After 2,300 years, the temple shall be cleansed. Well, everyone that was studying Daniel, including Miller, he was the big guy, he just figured, okay, the earth must be the temple. So if the earth is going to be cleansed, that must be Jesus coming and making the earth new or something like that. So they figured it was the second coming. What they didn't know was the temple sanctuary service of the Old Testament, which literally has a day of the cleansing of the temple, right? Which is called the Day of Atonement. The Day of Atonement is when, as a person would kill a lamb, they would sprinkle the blood on the temple, which would basically be, okay, your sins were put into the lamb, into his blood, but now that blood is being put on the temple. So the temple is holding on to those sins. So you're sinless, you've been forgiven, but like the sins are kind of still there, right? God has taken the sins from you. On the Day of Atonement, it was once a year where the temple would be cleansed, right? They would actually have a lamb and a goat, or a ram and a goat. And the ram or the lamb would be sacrificed, and the blood of that animal would take the sins of the temple, and they would sprinkle it on the goat. All right, and then the goat would be taken off into the desert to die. That goat, and that's actually where we get the word scapegoat from. That goat represents the devil, who ultimately pays the price for everyone's sins. Right? He's gonna burn and things like that. So that temple ceremony, that Day of Atonement, was the cleansing of the sanctuary, or it's the beginning of justice. All right, because the people have been forgiven, but someone still has to pay for those sins, right? That's why it's kind of being held by God, and that's what Jesus represents. He pays for those sins by dying on the cross, but ultimately, the devil actually pays for it as well, I guess, right? He's punished for it, for the sins. So that's what they made a mistake with. So 1843 or 1844 wasn't the second coming, as a lot of people thought, which is why it became the Great Disappointment. But we believe, and this is when we have to go into Revelation, we believe it's the beginning of judgment, right? That book that we talked about right in the beginning of Daniel, right, is repeated quite often in the book of Revelation as the book of the Lamb. And in that book, it has our life history, basically, right? It has everything you've ever done, with the exception that if you go to Jesus, right, if you ask your sins to be forgiven, his blood wipes away all your sins. So that when the judgment day does come and God opens up the book, you're standing there, he puts it on your page, it's empty, right? Like there's no sins to judge you by because Jesus already paid for it. When we talk about those two resurrections that we glimpsed at here in chapter 12, Revelation will get a lot deeper into those. Um, when God comes back, so the second coming, he's not going to open the books and be like, okay, you're saved, you're not, you're saved, you're not, you're saved. When he comes, the judgment's already done. He automatically just resurrects everyone that's good, and everyone that's bad either remains dead or dies, right? For 1,000 years. There's this 1,000 year period. During that 1,000 years, Revelation's going to tell us that that's when we have a chance to see if God made any mistakes, right? We basically double check the books, make sure that, because you might be like, wait a minute, why isn't my mom here? She was a really good person. I think she should have made it. So God's like, well, listen, this 1,000 years is for that. Go through every name you can imagine and see why they made it or why they didn't. Because imagine getting to heaven and you see Hitler there. You'll be like, God, I think maybe you screwed up on this one, right? Let's look up Hitler, kind of a thing, right? Because and that's maybe not Hitler, but guaranteed there's going to be people in heaven that you're going to be shocked. You're going to be like, whoa, they made it? Like I always thought they were like this bad person, or I always thought that they didn't like God or whatever. But then there's also going to be people that you're like, no, but this person was like sincerely a good person. Why didn't they make it, kind of a thing. So those 1,000 years is really for that, right? Go through the books, make sure that every single name is fine. But God's already done that, right? Like he's finished his judgment. And then at the end of the 1,000 years is the second resurrection, which is of the condemned. And that's when they're actually judged, right? And given their life sentence, kind of thing, the eternal death. So what that means is when the second coming happens, God's already finished going through the books. And so what we're going to see in Revelation, this is kind of what we pull out of the verses, is that from the end of the 2,300-year prophecy, when the temple is cleansed, the beginning of the Day of Atonement, until the second coming, is God going through those books, right? So in 1844, God opened up that book and started going through from like Adam, Eve, Seth, and Cain, Abel, and all of the sons. So he's kind of going through history, everyone that's ever lived, right? He's going through those books and either putting them as condemned or saved. At some point, he'll get to our names, right? At some point, he'll get to the names of those that are still alive. Once he judges those people, it's like the end, right? Like, hey, everyone's been judged. And that's when the second coming can happen. So from the 1840s, 1844 roughly, until today, God, and when we actually read that in the Bible, Jesus is in the most holy place, doing this work, right? Going through this, what do they call it? They give it a fancy name, investigative judgment or something like that. Kind of like a prejudgment, right? Like he's going through the books. So that's kind of what we believe, anyways. That's how it's explained. Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Um, this part is something that I can't wrap my brain around because, okay, fine, I can accept that 1,000 years, like after the first resurrection, are given to people to just, come to terms with everything and then settle into your new life, whatever. But what if there is that period allotted for people to double check God's judgment? Why bother spending the time like opening the books and going through, and God just he doesn't need to, he's not combing through names.
Yeah. I think that part of that, the way that we explain it as Adventist anyways, like he's going through the names and things like that. I think that's just have to make it almost visual so that people can understand kind of what's being done right now. But you're absolutely right. He doesn't need the book. He knows everyone's life with the book closed, kind of a thing, right? I think what it's this time that we're living, right? Based on the Bible, the last prophecy that's given is that 2300. All right. So the last prophetic dates that were given is 1844, 1843, 1844. And that number actually appears a few times in Daniel and in Revelation. The way I see it is basically God can come back anytime after this date. All right. For me, the way I see it is the end. You know how he says, seal up the book until the time of the end. That time of the end isn't like a day. It's not like the second coming day. It's this time span as to when like the events of the end begin, right? That's what I see 1844 as. 1844 is like the beginning of the end, right? Where kind of all of these things that need to happen at the end will happen. All of it will happen within that period and Jesus coming back. The reason why, 1844, that's already, so that's 1944, 2044. So we're about 100 and, it's been about 180 years, roughly, 82 years or something like that, 83 years, since 1844, right? Since the 1840s. And people ask, well, does it really take God that long to get through a book? Right? Does it take God that long to get through, guilty, not guilty, and stuff like that? Obviously not. What I think is going on, and this is based on like Jesus's own words, is that there's still people he wants to save, right? He's not waiting because he's not finished the book yet. He's waiting because there's people that haven't heard the truth yet, right? There's still whole parts of the world that haven't heard the gospel yet. And I think he's just giving the people of the world extra time to make that choice, right? To accept God and not be condemned in that way. So the way we teach it is just to make it almost to make it visual, right? Like, okay, so this is like a judgment time kind of that's going on, which is true. But I think really when you read through, Jesus's words and things like that, the message that I always get is there's still other people out there, right? Like there's still people that need to hear the truth. Jesus, his last commandment to the disciples, or in the beginning of Acts, actually, he says, when you preach, start in Jerusalem, then Israel, then Samaria, then the outer regions, then the world, right? So God knows that it's a process, right? Like I don't want to just save Jews. I don't want to just save the Middle East. I want to save the whole world. And until the whole world has a real chance to accept me, I'm going to keep the world going, right? Theoretically, the world could have ended after Jesus died on the cross, right? Jesus proved that he's love, right? He showed who Satan is, he showed who God is. Theoretically, he could have ended it there. Okay, we're done. But, we would have never been saved, right? We never even had a chance because the world would have ended so long ago. So that's what I think is going on in terms of that, why so many years. The other thing, though, is for us, it seems like a long time, 180 plus years. It really isn't, right? When you put it in context of how long the world's been going on, it's been thousands of years, right? So what's another 100 years in God's eyes? It's nothing really. For us, it seems long. For us, it's like, hey, God, things are getting worse. Why don't you just hurry it up already, right? They just come down. But really, God isn't. We're not waiting for God. I'll put it this way. God's waiting for us, right? The Bible is very clear that we have a mission to do, right? We have to reach the people of the world. Once that's done, then the end will come. I don't know if you've ever read Matthew 24. It's a prophetic chapter that Jesus talks about. And he talks about what the end of the world is going to be like. He talks about the Antichrist, things like that. But one of the things that he says is, listen, he's like this. You're going to see wars and rumors of wars, but it's still not the end. There's going to be diseases and pestilences, but that's still not the end. There's going to be antichrists, people to be claiming to be Jesus or whatever. That's not the end. When he actually gets to the point, he goes, and then the gospel will be preached in the whole world. Then the end will come, right? So that's really what's determining the end. It's not events. It's not God going through the book or anything like that. It's literally the job has to be finished, right? Once we do that job, then everyone's had a chance, and yeah, God can come down. There's nothing holding, nothing holding God back from doing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess I differ a little bit there. Like the hardcore Adventist ones will be like, no, Jesus is going through the book and making sure. Um, I,
Well,
I
I
mean,
mean,
it's possible.
also,
Maybe he is going through a book.
yeah,
I just, when I picture God, I kind of picture him a little bit more powerful than that, right? He's just like done, like
yeah,
he doesn't
totally.
need to do all, like he knows what he's lived through history. It's not like he has to remember, did that person accept me or not? Let me go back to the book. He's been in every moment, right? Um, but I guess I know why they say it. It's because Daniel's mentioned it. Revelation is going to mention the book, right? The book shall be opened and blah blah blah. And so it is visual, right? When you see it that way, okay, there's a physical book up there, and God is going through that book. I get that.
Mhm.
What I think people don't remember or forget is Revelation is prophetic and it's imagery, right? A lot of the things that we see, for instance, there isn't a big statue made of different metals. There isn't beasts coming out of the water or whatever ruling the countries. That's all imagery, right? The beast represents something. The statue represents something. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think the book represents something, right? There might be a physical book in heaven. I'm not going to be shocked if there is. Um, but remember, heaven isn't the earth, right? Heaven is like super advanced. Um, Computers are obsolete in heaven, kind of a thing, right? So what's the odds that there's going to be like just books, like that's human thinking, kind of a thing, right?
Mhm.
But if you're going to have a vision, it makes perfect sense that you would see a book, right?
Mhm.
Because maybe it's some giant computers, I don't know. Um, but so I think sometimes we can get a little bit caught up in the imagery of things, right? The details of things. Um, but yeah. Okay, let me just read this one. I think this is the last verse. Yeah. So this is like the 10th time, or who knows how many times. But you go your way till the end, for you shall rest. So he's literally telling him, listen, Daniel, you will die before any of this happens, right? For you shall rest and will arise to your inheritance at the end of the days. So again, this is huge. This is the angel saying, Daniel, you're going to be resurrected. And I think this is maybe what Daniel needed to hear, right? And think about it. So Daniel is this Jewish boy, right? He's probably taken to Babylon when he's what, maybe 13, 14 years old, right? But within those 13 years, he's been heavily indoctrinated into Judaism, right? He believes in his nation, he believes in his religion, he believes in his God, and so on. Then he watches his temple get destroyed. He watches his city get destroyed. He gets taken into a slave to the king that destroyed his people. But he stays strong with God, right? He keeps believing in God, and God proves himself to him, right? God does all these miracles with Daniel. Um, and I think I understand why Daniel would be confused because he's like, God, I can see your power. I know you could fix this in a second if you want. I know you love your people. So why don't you rebuild Jerusalem? And then when he gets this thing that there's going to be like 5 nations or whatever it is, and then there's still no Israel, I think Daniel is honestly just confused. He's like, do you love us? Do we matter? Do we not matter? And then even thinking about himself, he's like, what do I get out of this? I'm a Jew living in a foreign land. I can't do what I want. I can't go to the temple and do sacrifices and so on. Um, I'm getting old. I'm going to die one day without even seeing the temple done. Why should I stay as a Jew? Right? Odds are he didn't have a family. It doesn't say anything about a wife or kids or anything like that. So his life is going to end with Daniel. That's it. He's done. And so I think part of him is like, God, why am I still doing this then? If there's no future for me. And this last verse is the big giveaway. It's like, Daniel, listen, you're gonna die before any of this happens, but it's not your end, right? You're gonna be one of those people that are gonna resurrect. And this is a brand new message for him, right? This idea of the resurrection and life after death and so on. You don't see that much in Judaism. But the angel is telling Daniel, no, listen, it's okay to die as a good Jew because you're going to resurrect and you'll finally get everything that you've been asking for. You're going to see the temple again. You're going to see God's people again. You're going to see, no more wars and all of these things, everything that Daniel hated, right? And I think maybe this is the last verse that he just needed. He's like, listen, you do have a future, right? So I don't know. That's my guess. It doesn't say what his reaction is after this, right? Whether he was depressed again or not. But it is a happy ending. It's kind of cool because he's one of the few people in the Bible that's actually guaranteed heaven, right? Like he's been promised that he's gonna go to heaven. The other guy is the one that dies beside Jesus on the cross, right? I'll tell you this today, you'll be with me in heaven. So he's guaranteed. Um, Everyone else, obviously we think Peter and John and James and those guys, right, will go to heaven. But these guys are actually given the promise directly by either God or by an angel. So that's kind of cool. It'd be nice to get one of these. Of course, you only get one of these at the end of your life, right? You don't want to get cocky and be like, I can do whatever I want. I've been promised, right?
Definitely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Any questions?
No, this makes sense.
All right. The ending there, I completely forgot about those dates. I would have put in some diagrams so you can see like the time chart.
Yeah, I've done different studies on those, so I had a little bit of context, but
Hmm.
that diagrams also help.
Yeah. For next week, I think what I might do, I have to make sure I have enough time for it, is to do a study on the temple and specifically like I'll do hope maybe some of the things that they would do at the temple, the rituals, and specifically talk about like the Day of Atonement so that you can understand that whole cleansing of the sanctuary. It's very, very clear in the Old Testament.
And did you say that there's only a couple studies left?
Well, theoretically, we could go as long as we want, really.
Yeah. But then you're starting over from scratch?
For sure with like the kids, probably.
Okay.
So the kids, I don't go as deep as this stuff, right?
Right.
We did all the same studies actually. They did one more study after this. After this one, I do the study of the 1,000 years actually, the two resurrections. So I always try to explain that, and that's how I end it with them. But for us, we can keep going. I don't mind.
Yeah, I would love to get into Revelation, but maybe that's too intense. And also, I know you do that on Wednesdays. So,
You know what? It's when you hear Revelation, you kind of think, "Oh, this is going to be intense." It's actually a lot easier than it people make it out to be. Once you kind of understand the repetition, that it's very similar to Daniel in that respect. All
right.
right. You can basically break down Revelation into it's an introduction, and then it's seven churches, seven seals, seven trumpets, seven last plagues, and then the second half of Revelation. All right.
Okay.
And basically what it is, it's just a repetition. The seven churches are the seven seals, are the seven trumpets. It's just retelling just like Daniel did with the statue and then the beasts, and it's doing the same thing, but kind of from a different perspective. So, like, what's from John's day until the second coming? What's life going to be for the church? Okay, what's life going to be for the bad people, right? What's life going to be for the individual Christian? And that's why you get, so it's a retelling, but from a different perspective, right? Um, the second half of Revelation, and it's amazing that it's literally half the book, is it retells it again, but not in chronological order. So instead of doing a time frame thing, it goes like this. All right, these are the major players. So these are like the major good guys, these are the major bad guys, and this is how what they're gonna do, and this is how they end. This is what they're gonna do, and this is how they end. So the second half of Revelation is actually my favorite. It's amazing the stuff that it tells us. But the first half, you need the first half to understand the second half, right? Because once you know the timeline, okay, I know what's going on here. So who's this power and who's this power? That's what the second half of Revelation is for. It just gives us that information. And just remember, it's just like Daniel. A statue really isn't a statue. A beast really isn't a beast, right? So when, for instance, when we talk about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? It's not four horsemen. It's just four different time periods. It's it's not glamorous like that, right? When you watch it in the movies, you expect like this angel flying on this horse killing people or something. No, it's nothing that glamorous. It's just this is what's going to happen during this time period. So it is simple in that respect. Now, the difference between Daniel and Revelation is we know Daniel fairly well. We think we know all the different points. You know, there might be a little bit of deviance here and there, but we think we pretty much got it. Revelation is a different story because there's still parts of Revelation that haven't happened yet, right? So it's easy to understand things that have happened because you look back and you're like, oh yeah, that was easy, that's obvious. But when you're looking forward, you're still kind of guessing, right? But I'll let you know that. I'll be like, listen, this next section, these are the three best guesses, kind of a thing, right? I'll give you the different options because, yeah, it gets a lot more interesting, but also a lot more complicated to know exactly. You know, we have a decent idea out of context, but details, it's hard to tell, right? Until it happens. Once it happens, we'll be like, oh yeah, there it is. That was easy. Now it makes sense, kind of a thing, right? But yeah, we'll get to that for sure, for sure. All right, let me close this and we'll wrap up with the prayer. Stop recording.